Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of Audit, Risk and Scrutiny Committee. Meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance. Muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting. Writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. I was going to say if you're in the hall, but actually it's just myself and the Vice Chair in the hall. And you can also use the hands up function if that is better for you. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. If any member has to leave the meeting, please either leave the Teams meeting for that period of time and write leave in the Teams chat function and then join when you rejoin so we can keep a track of if we're quorate. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions, and when referring to reports, please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. Please focus contributions on areas where clarification is required or to propose an alternative to a recommendation. We have basically one report to consider today, and I anticipate that we'll deal with this business in our usual efficient manner. So moving on to item 1, sediment and apologies. Claire, can you confirm who's present?
Okay, thank you, Chair. As you've just advised, it's yourself and the Vice Chair present in the Council Hall today. All other members present are on Teams. We have 3 members currently not present, being Councillors Tuesday, Mail and Lowe. I understand Councillor Lowe may be along later. Thank you.
Thank you. And I approve members' remote participation. So moving on to item 2, do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? Not seeing any indications. Okay, moving on to item 3, minute of previous meeting of 27th September 2022. Are we happy to agree that this is an accurate minute of the meeting? Gosh, you're all very quiet today. Thumbs up from Tony. Thank you very much, Councillor Beretti. So moving on to item 4, the substantive part of the meeting, a report by external audit on the 2021-22 audit of Dumfries and Galloway Council, report by Head of Finance and Procurement. And I have Gillian Ross and Paul Garrett in the room, and Joanne Brown and Rebecca Lister are online to assist members with any questions. Does anybody have anything to add to the report at this stage? Gillian? Paul?
Just to say, the external auditors are here who will introduce and run through the report.
They're here.
Yeah, they're actually online.
Yes, that's what I said.
So,
yeah.
is that okay?
Sorry. Yeah, that's fine. Nothing to add to the report? No. So I'll open it up to member debate.
I think Joanne Brown and Rebecca might want to speak to the report first.
Asked. Rebecca, Gillian, do you want to speak to the report? Joanne, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. If I could just do a brief introduction, and then if Rebecca could just chat members through our key messages, and then we'd be happy to pick questions up. This is our 6th and final year as your external auditors, and this annual report to members and the Controller of Audit in effect concludes our audit for this financial year. The report itself was drafted in the middle of November, so there are some placeholders. So when we pick up the key messages, we'll just update members on where we are with the work that was outstanding when the report was published. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the finance team in particular. Both teams have worked well to conclude the audit. There was a change in the audit timeline, which we picked up at the September committee, and I know that did impact on the finance team with their other commitments, so their help and assistance with the audit has been very much appreciated. Following the audit committee, we will work with the officers just to close out our remaining queries and ensure that all our work is documented on our audit file and meets our audit quality standards. Once that's been concluded, we will issue an audit opinion, and that will allow the Council to upload the signed financial statements in accordance with the timelines to the Council's website. At this stage, subject to no issues arising on infrastructure assets, we propose to issue an unmodified audit opinion. If I just pass briefly to Rebecca, she'll pick up for you the key messages we'd like to draw your attention to, appreciating it is quite a substantial report, and then happy to pick up questions.
Thanks, Jo. So I'll take the report as read, as it's quite a big report. However, I'll go through, as Jo mentioned, and pull out the key messages from the report. So as Jo mentioned, the plan is to issue an unmodified audit opinion on the financial statements, and we are coming towards the concluding stages of the audit. However, there are still some areas that are being worked through with the aim to provide an opinion for the accounts to be published in line with the deadline of the 15th of December for the online publishing of the accounts. We have faced some issues which have resulted in some delays to the audit, including national issues regarding infrastructure assets, which I'll go on to talk about a little bit later on. But overall, we've had a good level of engagement with the finance team, and both teams have worked well together to resolve some of the issues previously highlighted. So if I just draw your attention to page 6 of the report, or page 20 in your agenda pack, this essentially outlines the updated materiality figures, which have been revised upwards from the audit plan previously communicated. And this is essentially due to the fact that we've based materiality on the draft 21-22 financial statements, whereas planning materiality was based on the prior year financial statements. So we haven't identified any issues during the audit that would require us to revise materiality downwards. So the report essentially sets out how we've determined the materiality amounts for the financial statement audit. Also, just to draw to your attention that we do have a separate materiality for the remuneration report, and that is £25,000. And essentially, because that is quite a sensitive area of the accounts, we essentially have a lower threshold of materiality for the remuneration report. If I then move on to page 21 of the agenda pack, and as Jo mentioned, the report was drafted a couple of weeks ago. So just to give you a verbal update of where we are in terms of progress with the audit. So we are coming towards the concluding stages. However, there still are some areas that are in progress, and we're just awaiting the final bits and pieces of evidence and queries for. There is a placeholder there regarding journals, and there were some delays with that due to some reconciling issues. However, that work is now complete, and our samples being sent out, and we're just in the process of just waiting for the last bits and pieces of evidence to review. But to date, we haven't identified any material issues with the journals work that we've done so far. As highlighted later on in the report, we've also got some work ongoing with the PP valuations, and this is largely related to the infrastructure asset issue, which has impacted not only Dumfries and Galloway councils, but has impacted all councils nationally with material infrastructure assets. So the Scottish Government put through a temporary statutory override late in August, and we're currently engaging with our engineer experts who are performing work to ensure essentially that the net book value of the infrastructures disclosed in the accounts is reasonable. And then finally, our audit is also subject to our usual closing procedures, which includes final senior quality reviews and receipt of the management representation letter, which is attached as a separate agenda item to this report. If I then move on to pages 22 to 24, so they outline our responses to the significant risk communicated to you within the audit plan. So just going through the key messages from these areas. So management override of controls. This is a presumed significant risk for all audits in line with the international standards of auditing. A lot of our work revolves around the journals work. So as mentioned, we're just at the finalising stages of our journals work, waiting on the final pieces of evidence to support the journal postings. But again, we haven't identified any material issues from the work that we've performed on journals to date. The next risk is around the valuation of land and buildings. Essentially, this is a significant risk because it is quite a large number within the accounts. It is quite a complex estimate, and there's a lot of assumptions that go into the valuation of that. So we've engaged our experts who've not identified any material issues in relation to the valuation reports or the terms of engagement that they've reviewed. We are waiting on some evidence from the valuer to support some of the assumptions, but we're hoping that will come back this week so we can conclude our work on that. and we've reviewed the accounting treatment to date and have not identified any material issues in relation to the valuation accounting of the movements of the building valuations. The next risk is around the valuation of the pension liability. Again, this is a large number within your accounts. Again, it's quite a complex estimate with lots of assumptions being made by the actuary in terms of the valuation. We've concluded our work and it's just subject to final reviews, and we're satisfied again that there's no material issues in relation to the pension liability disclosed in the accounts. And then the final risk there is around revenue recognition. Again, this is a presumed risk in line with the international standards of auditing. However, we can rebut this risk if we believe that there isn't a heightened risk for the council. So we have rebutted this risk, and the reasons why are documented in the report. And again, we have, from our work performed, we haven't identified any material issues in relation to the risk. If I then just take you on to pages 27 to 30 within the agenda pack. So this highlights the key estimates, which I've just talked through most of those in relation to property, plant, equipment and pension valuation. So I don't propose to go through that again. We have, however, reviewed the disclosure of accounting estimates and estimation uncertainty. It's our judgment that some of the estimates disclosed in this note aren't material. However, management have judged these to be material and therefore they'll continue to include those in the notes to the account. So we're just drawing your attention to that. Pages 31 to 33 outline the other reporting requirements that we're required to report to you. So based on our work to date, we have no exceptions to report against any of these areas. Moving on to pages 35 and 50 within the agenda pack. So this essentially outlines our commentary with regard to wider scope and best value. This is quite a long commentary, so again, I'll take it as read and just pull out some of the key messages. So within our audit plan, we identified 3 significant risk areas, and the first of those was around COVID-19 recovery and remobilisation. So from the work that we've performed in a review of the arrangements in year, we're satisfied that the council have managed resources to ensure recovery and remobilisation. The council currently has a good financial position. However, there is a planned funding gap of around 50 million over the next 5 years. So it'll be important to ensure that the council continues to review its financial plans, perform things like risk and sensitivity analysis to ensure that the financial assumptions underpinning those plans remain valid, and that there's plans in place to bridge funding gaps and deliver required saving targets. So our review of arrangements this year have identified the council is already carrying out this work, so it'll just be for the council to make sure that this work is continuing and being developed. The next risk that we outlined in our plan was around governance and transparency. So we note last year that there was interim arrangements in place during a period of absence from the previous chief executive officer and during the time where a new CEO was being recruited. Our review identified that there was appropriate arrangements in place by the council to ensure continuity of governance during the period, and also the local government elections that were held in May also meant there was new members being appointed. So we looked at the arrangements and we were satisfied that there was arrangements in place to ensure that new members have undertaken or are undertaking training relevant to their roles and governance responsibilities. And then the final risk was around the Borderlands deal. So we reviewed the arrangements in place in relation to the Borderlands deal and the role played by the council. Our review identified that there was good areas of practice from the partnership board, including regular reporting on progress, risk delivery and benefits realisation. And we also noted from our review that the council played an active role in this, and updates were provided to full council. So in terms of the significant risk area, there was no areas of weakness that would cause any concern for us. We then also review some other areas as part of our wider scope work. So we reviewed the council's arrangements over performance and reporting. Our review found that the council does a lot of work in ensuring performance is monitored in relation to service lines and council plan, which is reported to full council. However, what we did identify was the council performance report hadn't been updated within the performance section of the website. So although performance is reported in other ways, there are things like some committee reports, it is best practice to ensure that the performance section of the website is kept up to date, and that's really just to ensure that the wider public and stakeholders are able to easily access this information. We also then looked around about the council plan, and that's due to be delivered this year with a refresh of the next iteration of the council plan due to be published. So we've recommended that the council look to establish performance monitoring for delivery of the next plan, just to ensure transparency of reporting and measurement of delivery. Overall, our work in these areas hasn't identified any significant issues with arrangements in place, and the recommendations raised later on in the report are really just best practice recommendations to help develop some of those underlying processes that are already there. Finally, just moving on to the appendices of the report. So in Appendix 1, there aren't any adjusted or unadjusted audit misstatements identified that we are required to report or impact on the financial statements. Appendix 2, there are some disclosure adjustments that have been made to the accounts as detailed here. The only adjustment not made is in relation to the estimates note in the account, which, as previously mentioned, management have deemed these to be material, so therefore they've continued to include. We haven't identified any action plan recommendations as a result of the financial statement audit. However, we've identified some best practice recommendations as a result of our wider scope work. Again, none of which are indicative of risks relating to council arrangements. And Appendix 4 finally then details our follow-up of prior recommendations, some of which are open and have been discussed previously in other matters flowing through within the report, and others which are currently in progress by the council. Again, there's nothing in here that gives us undue cause for concern. And then finally, our last slides document the agreed audit fee is communicated within the audit plan and our communication requirements of audit matters, which have been outlined either within the audit plan or within this audit report. So I know it's quite a big report, so I'll pause there, and we're happy to take any questions that any members have.
Thanks very much, Rebecca and Joanne. Very comprehensive update as well, and very useful for members. I have Councillor Dryber online.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. And thanks, Joanne and Rebecca, for 6 years of working with us and hopefully getting some improvements done. If I can turn to page 28, which is talking about the council's pension side of things, and you're looking at the LGPS assumptions in the discount rate, 2.7, the actuary value PwC is 2.72, but you've got it down as a yellow. And then on page 30, yellow says we consider the estimate as unlikely to be material misstated. However, management estimation process contains assumptions we consider cautious. Is that a good thing or a bad thing for the first one? And Chair, as you'll be aware, when I left school, I had 2 A-level shoplifting and truancy, and my English wasn't very good. But I think on page 42, the councillors in the second line of the second paragraph in May 22, councillors, are those supposed to have 2 L's in it?
I think you left school with as many O levels as me then, Archie. Rebecca, I'll turn to you, but if there's a typo, we'll correct that as well.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, so in terms of the assumptions, so I think because the actuary has used the lower figure of the range that's given, there's probably a bit more caution in terms of the assumptions that have been used. But overall, if we look at each of the assumptions that have been used, they are within that range. And so we are satisfied that the assumptions that the actuary has used to inform the pension liability are appropriate. So we wouldn't have any cause for concern based on the assumptions that have been used by the actuary. So hopefully that helps. In terms of page 42, if there is a typo, apologies for that. We'll make sure that that's updated.
That's great, thanks.
You happy with that, Archie?
Thanks, Chair, yep.
Yeah, and I'm frantically searching for the typo, but I can't read that quickly. Do we have any other members with questions? I'll just give folk a moment online to catch up. Councillor Barretti.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. was a bit confused at the paging numbers, but I suddenly realised that Rebecca has got a sheet, is working from a sheet that doesn't include all the other pages that we have. So I'm looking at just page 58, and it's enhancing performance reporting to demonstrate best value. So I just want to ask exactly what kind of mechanisms are you looking for, and in response to what the council should be providing you with, what is best value? And is this best value, does that relate to all assets right across the board?
Rebecca?
Sorry, if I could just confirm page 58.
I think it's page 58 in the members' pack in the main reports.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah.
Page 44 of the report itself.
Yeah, I got arithmetic at school.
I'll just give Rebecca a moment to get to the right page.
Yes, so this is essentially around the performance reporting, which I touched on a little bit in terms of the wider scope. So I think in terms of the arrangements the council has for performance reporting to demonstrate best value, we're satisfied with the arrangements that are in place. So the council will receive updates on a regular basis in terms of the performance monitoring and the performance reporting against the council plan. Essentially, what we've identified here is that all of that reporting goes into the council agenda packs and minute meetings that are quite hard to find if you're maybe someone outside of the council and you're looking for an update on performance reporting. And so the council has a performance section of their website, which essentially is where it's usually reported what the performance measures and monitoring are against the council plan. That hadn't been quite updated in line with all the reports that had went to full council. And so our recommendation there is more just on a transparency level, making sure that that section of the website is up to date. So there isn't any issues that we've identified in terms of the actual arrangements for reporting performance to full council and in line with the council plan. It's more just a transparency piece around making sure that that's updated and easily accessible for those out with the council.
Yeah, I just want to follow up, Chair. I'm assuming that we're being judged against other councils as well. What would be Rebecca's opinion of how we're doing so far?
So in terms of, I guess we more look at the arrangements as opposed to actually what you are doing in terms of your performance mechanisms. There hasn't anything that has came up within our review that has suggested there's any red flags in terms of how you're doing performance-wise. But I guess the majority of our review relates to the arrangements that are in place to make sure that things are being monitored, where there is dips in performance. Are those being highlighted? Are those being actioned against? And are those being resolved and reported back to ensure that actually where there are dips in performance, there's arrangements in place to make sure that that can be resolved. So that's more the area of where our review would take place.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Councillor Barretti. I have Councillor Young.
Thank you, Chair. The audit process seems to have gone very smoothly, so well done to everybody. There are a couple of things I want to ask. Councillor Dryber asked about pensions, and I'm just wondering if following COVID, there's obviously a link between life expectancy and, shall we say, the pension pot. I believe life expectancy has fallen following COVID. Does that reflect on the pension pot required to cover forthcoming pensions? And my second point is, I noticed the council used Colliers as their property valuation, whereas the auditors used their own valuation experts. Could we have a wee bit of more information regarding that, and if there was good correlation between both sets of experts? Thank you.
Thank you. So in terms of the question on pensions around life expectancy. So in terms of the work we do to make sure that the pension liability stated as is not materially misstated, we use PwC as our expert, and essentially they provide a range of what they expect the life expectancy to be as at the 31st of March 2022, and whether or not the actuary used by the council is using those assumptions to inform the valuation of the pension liability. In terms of the contributions to the pension pot, I may have to defer that question over to Gillian and Paul to answer that one. So I'll maybe hand over to them. If I pick up on the PP valuations, Colliers is management's expert. So in terms of the council's valuers, they'll use Colliers to inform the valuation of property, plant and equipment. We will then use our expert who is independent, so we do not use Colliers, we'll use an independent valuation expert. And because essentially myself and other members of the audit team, we are not qualified valuers, so we are unable to look at those assumptions and provide opinion as to whether or not they're reasonable. So we engage our own expert to essentially look at the assumptions used by your own expert to make sure that the assumptions being used to inform that valuation are appropriate.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. I'll turn to Paul for the other part.
Yep, just on the impact of life expectancy on the value of our pensions liabilities. The council uses, as does the pension fund, external actuarial experts to undertake valuations of our pensions liabilities, and that supports both the accounts process and the valuations that we take to the pensions subcommittee. Life expectancy is one of a range of factors that are taken into account when considering the value of future pension payments. We've seen for an extended number of years a kind of gradual rise in life expectancy, but in the last valuation, which was undertaken at the 31st of March 2020, that had levelled off, and we're due a further valuation as at 31st of March next year, and anticipation is that there may be a slight fall. And I think that's what's reflected in the current year's accounts in terms of life expectancy. So it's more been a levelling off, not a significant reduction there, but it's certainly one of the factors that the actuaries have taken fully into account when valuing our pension liabilities. And as Rebecca says, that's been reviewed by the auditors, and they're comfortable with the assumptions used as part of that.
Thanks for that, Paul, and I suspect there was a bit of an inevitability about that as well. Yeah. Are you satisfied with those responses, Councillor Young?
Yes, quite happy, Gail. I did ask if there's good correlation between the valuations carried out by the council and the one carried out by the auditor, but perhaps that's for another time.
Sorry, you're just breaking up ever so slightly there. Could you just repeat that, Councillor Young?
I'll try. There was an awful lot of background echo. No, I appreciate the answer. I did further ask, was there good correlation between the property valuations coming from our own council expert, Colliers, and the independent auditors' valuations? Because we all know now, post-COVID, that property is as much liability in many cases as it is an asset. So I was just interested to know, were the valuations of the council property in agreement, shall we say, Chair? Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Young. I'll turn to Rebecca.
Yeah, sorry, I missed that one. So we don't get our experts to perform a full valuation of the assets that the council hold. Essentially, what we use our valuation experts for is to make sure that the assumptions adopted by your own valuer are appropriate. So at the moment, they've not given us any, they've reviewed the report and essentially came back with no issues identified. We're still obtaining the last bits and pieces of evidence from your own valuer in relation to things like rental yields and that sort of stuff to make sure they're appropriate. But to date, we haven't identified any issues with the assumptions used by Colliers.
Thanks for that, Rebecca. Are you happy with that, Councillor Young?
Happy with that, thank you.
Good. Excellent. Do I have anybody else wishing to speak at this point? No indications, so I won't push my luck. So we've been asked to receive the external auditor's report, which we've done, and thanks very much to Rebecca and Joanne for all their hard work on this, and also to Grant Thornton for their work over the past few years. It's been very much appreciated. So, as I say, we've received that report. We're being asked to approve the letter of representation to be certified by the Head of Finance and Procurement and appended to the audit report as detailed at Appendix 2. Are we happy to approve? And I'll take silence as agreement and thumbs up from Councillor Barretti. Perfect. Number 3, we're asked to approve the audited accounts, which will be certified by the Head of Finance and Procurement and Grant Thornton following this meeting as detailed at Appendix 3. Happy to approve? More thumbs up. And 4, to note the certified accounts will be made available to all members before the 15th of December 2022, when they will be available on the Council's website as detailed at paragraph 3.9. Happy to note? Excellent. Perfect, thank you all. I don't have any other urgent business. So thank you all very much for your attendance, and thanks again, Rebecca and Joanne, for your time and efforts on that, and Paul and Gillian for your attendance today. Thanks very much all.